I'm Chris Gilbert. This is Oscar. We're from Archier, obviously, and we're here to talk about Corner House, which is a project down in Flinders. So when Rennie and Jan, the clients, first engaged us, they were in the process of, I guess, a massive change in their life. They were finishing their professional careers and they were retiring to Flinders to look after their aging parents. And that was pretty interesting to us. We're like, okay, this isn't just the normal brief of looking for a house or a forever house. They were actually going through a fundamental change in their life. And we took that opportunity to kind of reflect on what that means and how architecture can assist in that change. So what does it mean to go from working together or working apart in really intensive jobs to living together 24/7? And how can architecture assist in that, like softening of that, or allowing for those individuals to continue to grow within a context which is now them together all the time? I know personally, if me and my spouse were to move somewhere together after moving from a really intense lifestyle to being on top of each other 24/7, that relationship dynamic would fundamentally change. And reflecting on that and understanding that is where we kind of we started this project from. So that were the clients there. Sorry, just looking away from us. So at the start of the project, we have these kind of three major conceptual ideas. The first one here on the left is this idea of humanistics, like there's a tension that exists within a couple that are growing together, that, you know, we have these spouses and we love them and adore them, but there's always friction within that relationship, or always a kind of continual growth on the behalf of each party. And how do you allow both of those parties to exist and continue to develop within a single building? And the next one was about interaction, so interactivity, like how does the building envelope, how can we interact with the building envelope? How can landscape affect the building? And how can moving through the building affect how you understand landscape and how you interrupt that, how you relate with each other? That interaction also has to do with craft as well. When you touch the building, how does it feel? When you change the building, how does that change your relationship to landscape or to the immediate context? And the last one was elemental. So this, as Oscar will explain in a minute, this site is quite constrained. We kind of often joked about in the studio that it was the worst site in the best town on the peninsula. Like, it's really restrained, really difficult. So we were after a simple gesture that addressed the urban condition, but also celebrated the building. We weren't trying to fit into the landscape and be apologetic. We were trying to be kind of bold and proud and give something back. So I'll hand over to Oscar.
Yeah, so the site is in Flinders, which is about an hour and a half away from Melbourne. And that's on the Mornington Peninsula, which is, Chris just alluded to, is a very beautiful kind of natural coastal landscape. And Flinders itself, I guess, is equally a kind of very beautiful place. But the site itself sits on the kind of main street into town, so this north-south street here, and is surrounded by really large, both new and old development, residential development. And finally, I guess on this last site image, that you can see the proximity to that large road and the potential for noise being an issue on the site, but also the fact that the site actually almost feels suburban in a place that is otherwise kind of very beautiful. So this is the plan of the project that we put forward. So it's a square site, and the geometry of the plan responds directly to that squareness. We place each of the kind of programmed elements in the corners of the site, hence why it's called Corner House. So the entry moment is in this northeastern corner with the studio space here, office studio space, a living space in that northwestern corner, then the kitchen, dining, and the sleeping space, kitchen, dining, and living space over there. So each of these kind of domestic programs occupied one of the corners of the building, and it was the interplay between these domestic spaces and the way that the courtyard in the centre was able to kind of mediate them in the way that Chris was saying before, you know, with two people occupying the house, that someone might be in the studio space and be able to observe someone in the kitchen passively through the mediation of the landscape. So each one of these kind of domestic moments was linked by a gallery, and that gallery permitted a 600mm level change to each corner. So each corner, as you move up through the house, is 600mm higher than the previous corner. And they also provided a moment to kind of breathe, a kind of separation without doors between these domestic corners, which was really important to us. So this is a perspective from the entry point, where you have a really kind of tall space. So this is actually 4.2 meters tall. It's a kind of portrait aspect ratio space, and view to the landscape, and the gallery on the right-hand side taking you up to the bedroom. Then on the next corner, you have the kind of intimate world of the bedroom with robe on our left and bedroom in here. And you can see in this view that there's a kind of armature that runs around the outside of the building, a sort of joinery armature that runs around the outside of the building, and that holds both artwork and kind of domestic function. Moving up, the aspect of the glazing to the landscape begins to shift. So rather than a portrait proportion here, it's becoming more landscape, and we're moving up, so you're getting more of a view into the canopy of the landscape here. This is the kind of most social space in the house, the kitchen and dining space. And then finally, at the top of the journey, there's this really intimate, they call it the snug actually, but it's a kind of living space at the top. And you have a really letterboxy view to the landscape with a low ceiling. So there's a kind of really intricate movement up through the building. This shows how those galleries kind of operate. So they have multiple functions. They allow transition over level, but they also permit those long views. The idea of the kind of elemental view, or the really long view in a really small site, was something that was really important to us. Now some kind of images of the project. So this is the exterior. This is the street-facing exterior, and the batten and board cladding references the kind of old and sometimes ramshackled fishermen's cottages in Flinders, but is expressed here in a more contemporary way. And then there are moments in that otherwise kind of muted facade that allow kind of invitations to the interior, so a kind of allusion to the warmth of the interior. And there are 3 pivot doors on this elevation that again are at the scale of the entire building, so that Rennie and Jan can operate, almost change their environment themselves. Thinking back to those views we showed you just before, here's the kind of realisation of them. So the studio space is this tall letterboxy space, and then these are slightly out of order, but the bedroom is here, kitchen, dining, and then the living space at the top. So you can see here that spaces are really mediated and moments are really mediated through the courtyard. But the language, the architectural language here is of warmth, kind of timber warmth. These are some views.
A few seconds remaining.
Sure. These are some views of the galleries. So there's long views that are permitted. And some in-construction shots showing the SIPS construction and the focus on sustainability and performance of the building.